let's get on to where we are right now and where we are today. President last night, we got Susan. Okay, let's get a final report on this and sum it all up with our friend who's been kind enough to be with us now 3 days in a row and call in on this, which is thankfully over. Susan Ferrechio, chief congressional correspondent from the Washington Examiner. Hey, Susan, how are you?
Hey, Steve.
Must have been scary for a while, right?
It was. Well, I will say that it's not atypical in D.C. for there to be outside crime that kind of migrates onto the Capitol grounds and ends up, with a police chase or some kind of drama. No one really is sure right now what the motives are behind this, but it sounds like it started somewhere else and ended up here, like a car speeding through the barriers and a police chase. There are a lot of police here and a lot of barriers, and sometimes when crime ends up over here, I don't think these guys are expecting all these cops and all the response, but it certainly ended up that way. And what happened with us is we were, I work in the press gallery here in the Capitol, and they just came in and said, there's a lockdown, you can't go anywhere, which is what happens if there's a threat on the campus anywhere. And we have an annunciator box in here where a voice comes over and says, shelter in place and stay away from the windows. Even though reporters, your instinct is to go run to the scene, but then they tell you, oh, you can't move anywhere. So it's kind of frustrating too. But I could see out the windows people running and panic on the pathways around me. So it's kind of frustrating too. But I could see out the windows people running and panic on the pathways around the base in a car, a crime from outside the Capitol. The guy came speeding through, and he had a weapon in his car, and he ended up getting shot by the Capitol Police in front of the Capitol on the east side, across from Supreme Court. So it's D.C., it's a city, so there's crime here, but it's also, of course, there's the Capitol here.
Well, let me give you an update. Let me give you a little update, Susan. We're getting reports. CNN is reporting that the driver, the suspect, is a woman, and there's a report on the Drudge Report that the driver, the female suspect, is dead, is what they're saying.
I heard that.
Yeah, so
I heard that.
again, so apparently this person rammed the barricade at the White House,
right,
and was chased down to the Capitol, and then the gunfire was exchanged with the suspect when I guess she got out of the car, and there was a little girl, I think, which might have been in the car, because I read reports that there was a toddler, and I did see a girl being carried away by cops. So is that what you also heard reports, that there was a toddler, and I did see a girl being carried away by cops. So is that what you also heard?
Removed the child unharmed. I was also told that there was an officer injured, and that that person has been medevaced away.
Yes.
From here. So it's a pretty dramatic. That person has been medevaced away.
Yes.
From here. So it's a pretty dramatic here. The one thing that's different about today, Steve, is that, as you know, we're in the middle of this big fight over federal funding. Well, tours have stopped because the federal government's not being funded fully right now. Fight over federal funding. Well, tours have stopped because the federal government's not being funded fully right now. More people here outside and inside the Capitol. So the situation was controlled more quickly by the police, and people were able to get out of the way faster because there were just fewer of them. So we didn't have sheer panic in the hallways here, because the hallways are empty.
Right.
So
right.
It really was. It was handled, rather easily.
But I would guess, Susan, though, that it's also maybe the anxiety that also enhances the anxiety because of the reason why the hallways were empty, because there is a focal point on Washington with the lockdown. I'm sorry, with the shutdown, and you never know. Right away you think maybe it's a disgruntled person or an angry person or a group of people, and they, am I right? Does that maybe add to the tension and the anxiety at the time? Am I right? Does that maybe add to the tension and the anxiety at the time?
Staff being told to go home, and the empty hallways, the uncertainty, the debt ceiling fight coming up. What's going to, and of course, what else adds to it is just listen to the debate on the House and Senate floors. It's become so partisan and angry. So certainly there is that feeling around here that things are spinning out of control, if you will. But don't forget that the Capitol here people here are always a little bit on edge because it's considered a target just in general
Sure.
for whatever. So people here are always a little, when we hear that enunciator go up, I always go listen. I always walk right
I
over.
hear you. Well,
those of us who were here before September 11th and after know that
Yep.
you need to just be really vigilant.
Well, we are glad that certainly you are safe and that the injuries were held to a minimum as far as law enforcement and civilians, and it's over. And we thank you as always. Quickly, while I got you, just one question: where the heck is this thing going? I mean, they're dug in. It seems more than ever. At least the president is.
I see this happening in the form of a big deal that combines the short-term government funding and long-term government funding, where we fund the government for 2014, and we combine that with a deal to raise the borrowing limit.
But the president, so he's going to change?
I've heard Democrats say they like that in the Senate, and that's meaningful.
Okay.
I heard Chuck Schumer say, hey, we need to start combining these two things. We're running out of time. I know I've heard Democrats in the House say they don't like it. I think they'll be overruled because I think people realize the clock is running out. It's like a football game. They're looking for a path to victory here, a path through the crowd, without getting tackled. I think that combined effort will give everybody a little bit of what they want, and that's how you ease these deals over the finish line. So I think that's what's going to happen.
All right, Susan, thank you so very much. We always appreciate you coming on.
Anytime, Steve.
All right, take care. Susan Ferrechio, ladies and gentlemen, who was there in the thick of it, and thank God, like I said, just not just, but only, you know how I mean it, the one injury to the officer, flown to a hospital. Apparently the intelligence sources are telling CNN no apparent tie to terrorism. This woman is apparently dead. She was the driver of the car. The police are saying they did not know there was a little girl in the car when they opened fire, but thank God, apparently she was not injured. We don't know the relationship of the woman to the girl, but I'm sure all this will come out, and we'll bring it to you. You want to weigh in? 855-777-9660. Did you hear about this? When you heard about it, did you think it was worse? Did you think it was related to the shutdown? I'd love to know. And do you think Susan's right on target that there'll be a combined debt ceiling and CR deal when this is all said and done? 855-777-9660, he said, on the Steve Malzberg Show, Newsmax TV.